Famous pianist laughed at blind boy until his song left the world speechless. A famous pianist laughed at a blind child on national TV. Everyone in the audience chuckled along until the boy started playing. What happened next made the whole room go silent. That boy was Elijah. He didn't look like much when he stepped onto that shiny stage, just a skinny 9-year-old in a too big shirt, gripping his white cane like it was the only thing keeping him standing. Cameras zoomed. Any judges leaned forward. The crowd whispered. "Another feel-good story," one judge mumbled, almost rolling his eyes. The host smiled big for the camera. "Tell us what you'll be playing today, Elijah." "I'm not sure yet," Elijah said quietly. "I usually just play what I feel." Laughter scattered across the room. One judge, a man with silver hair and a stiff jaw, Langston Rowe, actually laughed out loud. "Oh, come on," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "This is a competition, not a playground." Elijah flinched but nodded politely. "I understand, sir." Langston leaned back, clearly not expecting much. But then, Elijah sat down at the piano. His small fingers hovered over the keys. For one long moment, everything went quiet. Then, with a deep breath, he began to play. What came out wasn't just music, it was memory. It was heartbreak. It was hope. The notes weren't just from a song, they were from a life. From a dark apartment with peeling paint and a single mom working double shifts. From the smell of noodles boiling on the stove and the sound of sirens screaming outside. From the dusty piano in the corner of a noisy community center, waiting for someone to believe it still had purpose. He didn't use sheet music. He didn't need to see. Elijah felt every note. His hands danced like they were chasing something. The rest of us couldn't hear, and as the melody unfolded, blending classical tones with soft gospel rhythms, you could feel the room change. People stopped whispering. Even Langston sat still, watching with a face that gave nothing away. When Elijah struck the final note, the sound hung in the air like a question nobody could answer. Silence. Then, someone in the back clapped. Then another, and another, and in seconds, the entire audience was on their feet, standing, clapping, crying. Elijah blinked in their direction, confused. He didn't know they were cheering for him. He just smiled a little and whispered, "Did I do okay?" His cousin Dwayne, watching from the wings, wiped a tear and whispered to himself, "More than okay, little man. You just changed everything." But before all of that, before the stage, before the cameras, before the world knew his name, Elijah was just a quiet boy in a loud neighborhood, born blind, raised by a tired but loving mother, ignored by teachers, overlooked by most, except one day. He walked into a place he'd never noticed before, the West Side Community Center, and in the back corner, covered in dust, stood an old upright piano. No one had touched it in months, maybe years, but something about it called to him, like it had been waiting. He followed the sound of silence, his cane tapping across the floor until his fingers brushed the wooden frame. He sat down, unsure, touched a few keys. Then, slowly, he started to play. No lessons. No one had ever taught him. Just feeling. Just memory. And that day, for the first time in his life, people heard him. A few staff members froze mid-step. "Who taught him that?" whispered one of the workers. "No one here," someone else replied. "I've never seen him play before." But Elijah didn't know he had an audience. He was just a boy at a piano, smiling. That moment started something, a spark. Because once someone sees you, they can't unsee it. And once someone hears your truth, they don't forget it. Elijah didn't go looking for fame. He didn't even believe in it. He just played what he felt. But sometimes, when the world tries to push you down, Your gift has no choice but to rise. And that's exactly what Elijah's music did. It rose, straight into hearts, and stayed there. After that first day at the community center, Elijah returned to the old piano every afternoon. No one asked him to. No one told him he should. But something about those keys felt like home. When he played, the world made sense. The noise in his mind, school struggles, the silence of being different, the voices that said he'd never be like other kids, all of that melted away. He didn't need sight to find the right notes, he just needed to listen. Word started to spread around the neighborhood. That blind kid who plays like magic. Some thought it was just a rumor. Others said someone must be helping him. But those who heard him play knew the truth. Elijah had something rare. At home, things were tough. His mom, Maureen, worked back-to-back shifts as a nurse's aide. Most nights she came home with aching feet and heavy eyes. Their apartment was small, just 2 rooms, peeling wallpaper, and a fridge that made strange noises. But she kept it spotless. Bills piled up on the counter, some with red stamps, some unopened. Still, Maureen never let Elijah feel like he was missing anything. She'd come home, change into a faded hoodie, and sit on the edge of his bed. "How was the center today, baby?" she'd ask. "Good," he'd answer. "I found a piano." Something in her face changed when he said that. Worry, maybe, or memory. But she nodded and said, "That's good." On Sundays, they walked together to New Hope Baptist Church. Elijah in his best shirt, Maureen in a blue dress she'd worn a dozen times but always made look new. The congregation knew them, respected Maureen, loved Elijah. And one Sunday, as the choir finished and the pastor stepped forward, he surprised everyone. "Before we close," he said, "I want to invite a young man to bless us with a little music." "Elijah, would you come up here, son?" Maureen looked shocked. Elijah froze. He hadn't expected this. "You don't have to," she whispered. "Only if you want to." Elijah stood up slowly. His cane tapped the floor with each step toward the front. The congregation watched in silence. Some leaned forward, some whispered prayers. He reached the bench, sat down, took a deep breath, and then he played. It started like a simple gospel tune, but something inside him shifted midway. His hands moved differently. He slipped into something else, something he didn't even recognize, a classical melody he didn't know the name of, wrapped in the spirit of the church. No sheet music, no plan, just feeling. The church went still. Phones came out. One woman cried and didn't even try to hide it. When he finished, there was a pause. Then a flood of applause. "Amen," someone shouted. "Play it again," said another. Maureen looked stunned. She didn't know he could do that. Neither did Elijah. That night, the woman who recorded the video uploaded it to Facebook with a simple caption: "This blind boy will take your breath away." At first, nothing happened. A few likes, a few shares. Then a music teacher in Detroit reposted it. Then a jazz player in New Orleans. Then a small news site picked it up. The view count ticked up. 1,000, 10,000, 50,000. Elijah was playing piano in the living room when Dwayne, his cousin, burst in, waving. "His phone? You're blowing up," he shouted. Maureen had just gotten home, her hair still tied in a messy bun. She looked from Dwayne to the screen. Hundreds of comments, thousands of views. "What is this?" she asked. "Elijah. He's going viral," Dwayne said, grinning like a proud big brother. "Look at these comments. Look at this love." Maureen stared at the screen, then at her son. "Is this what you want?" she asked softly. "You ready for what comes with that?" Elijah didn't answer right away. He just looked toward the window, toward the city, and said, "I just want to keep playing." That's when Dwayne had an idea. "There's an audition. Next month," he told them. "That show's soundstage. They're doing a special season for young musicians. He could try out." "Absolutely not," Moran said. "That world chews people up. They don't care about kids like Elijah. They'll turn him into a headline and forget him the next day." But Dwayne saw something different. He saw a way out, a path to something bigger. And even though Moran's answer was firm, Dwayne wasn't done yet. Because when someone you love has a gift the world needs to hear, sometimes you have to break a few rules to help them shine. Dwayne didn't take no for an answer. 2 nights after Moran shut down the idea of auditioning, he sat at his kitchen table staring at the soundstage application. He hesitated at the part where it asked for parental consent. He looked at Elijah's name already typed in, then at the box for a signature. He knew what he was doing. He also knew why. So he did it. "Sorry, Auntie," he muttered, clicking submit. "But this boy deserves a shot." The next few weeks moved fast. Dwayne called in every favor he had. A buddy from his old crew who now worked retail found Elijah a clean suit. Another friend with a car volunteered to drive them. It wasn't fancy, but it was enough. They told Moran they were going to the museum for a special exhibit for blind kids. She was working back-to-back shifts and barely had time to ask questions. "Be back by dinner," she said, pulling on her shoes. "And make sure he eats." As they drove across the city, Elijah sat quietly, hands folded in his lap. Dwayne glanced at him. "We're not going to the museum," he said. Elijah turned his head. "Where then?" Dwayne hesitated. "We're going to audition for soundstage." Silence. Then Elijah's voice, small and unsure. "Mom said no." "I know," Dwayne replied. "But sometimes moms say no because they're scared, and that's okay. But you? You're not scared, are you?" Elijah didn't answer. "Listen," Dwayne continued. "This is your shot. That piano you touched at church, it lit people up. This could be your way to shine for real. And maybe help you and your mom out of all this." Another pause. Then Elijah whispered, "What if I'm not good enough?" Dwayne didn't flinch. "Then you show them what real sounds like." The audition hall was huge. Kids in expensive clothes rushed around holding sheet music. Their parents barked directions. Coaches gave last-minute tips. The walls echoed with perfectly rehearsed scales and classical pieces. Elijah stood out like a sore thumb, small, quiet, holding nothing but his cane and Dwayne's arm. People stared. Some whispered, but Elijah just stood tall. When they called his number, a woman led them toward the stage. "The judges are ready," she said, glancing down at his cane with mild concern. Dwayne gripped Elijah's shoulder. Time to show them what they've never seen before. The theater was bright and echoey. At the long table sat 3 judges, a cheerful woman, an older man with a kind face, and Langston Rowe. Langston was a legend. Silver hair, sharp eyes. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. Elijah was helped to the piano bench. The host leaned into the microphone. "And what will you be playing today, young man?" Elijah hesitated. "I don't really know yet," he said honestly. "I just play what I feel." A small laugh rippled through the crowd. Langston scoffed. "You don't know? This is a serious competition, not a place to improvise." Elijah's head dropped slightly. "I understand, sir. I'll still do my best." He placed his fingers on the keys, and he played. The notes flowed gently at first. Something classical, maybe Mozart, but with soft shifts into blues and gospel. He let it move through him, building into a beautiful fusion that felt like sunshine after rain. The audience leaned in. The other judges were captivated. Langston didn't blink. When Elijah finished, the room burst into applause. not polite, not performative. Real. Even one of the camera operators wiped a tear. The first judge stood. "Extraordinary," she said. "Your gift is rare." The second nodded. "You feel what you play. That's rare in someone so young." Then Langston cleared his throat, and everything changed. "Memory is not music," he said coldly. "What you did was mimicry. Impressive, yes, but it lacks soul, discipline, depth. This is parlor trickery, not artistry." The room froze. Elijah's face crumbled for just a second. Langston kept going. "And let's be honest, the only reason we're applauding is because he's blind." "That's the real performance," gasps echoed. One of the judges shook their head in disbelief. The audience murmured. A producer scrambled to cut Langston's mic, but the damage was done. Elijah stood still at the piano, hands by his side. His eyes, though he couldn't see, seemed to be searching for something, anything to hold on to. Dwayne rushed on stage, wrapped an arm around him. "You were incredible," he whispered. "Don't you let him take that from you." Elijah nodded, but said nothing. That night, the clip went viral, but not for the music, for the pain. Blind boy humiliated on national TV. Langston Rowe criticized for cruel remarks. Let Elijah play, the world noticed. But Elijah? He shut down. The piano at the community center stayed untouched. At home, the music stopped. No notes, no practice, just silence. It would take something unexpected to bring it back, and someone unexpected to guide him toward it. Elijah didn't touch the piano for days, maybe weeks. Time blurred. The music that once poured out of him now sat buried deep behind the sting of Langston's words. Every time his fingers brushed the keys, he heard that voice again in his head. This is mimicry, not music. He believed it. Even Dwayne couldn't reach him. He won't talk about it, Dwayne told Moran one evening. He just sits there, headphones in, but no playing. Nothing. Moran sighed, rubbing her tired eyes. I should have stopped it before it even started. You couldn't have known, Dwayne said softly. But the guilt in her eyes said otherwise. Then one evening, something strange arrived. A thick, cream-colored envelope. No return address. Just Elijah Harris, written in careful cursive. Moran opened it with suspicion, ready to throw it out. Probably another reporter looking for a sad story to exploit. But inside was a short, handwritten note. You have something. If you want to understand what it is, come find me. PN beneath it, an address. 2 hours outside the city. Moran almost tossed it. But Elijah, sitting nearby, heard the paper crinkle. What's that? Nothing, she said. Just some weirdo. Can you read it to me? She hesitated, then read it aloud. When she finished, Elijah sat up straighter. For the first time in days, there was interest in his face. I want to go. Elijah, no. Absolutely not. I need to know, he said quietly. For 3 days, the letter sat on the counter. Moran passed it every morning, every night. Torn, protective. But she saw it. The way Elijah listened for footsteps near the counter. The way his fingers hovered just above the paper like he could feel the note calling him. Finally, she picked up the phone and called Dwayne. I need you to... Check this out, she said. If it feels off, we leave. Dwayne agreed. That Saturday, they hit the road. The city slowly gave way to silence. Buildings turned to trees, billboards to open sky. Elijah rolled down the window and took a deep breath. Smells clean, he said, smiling faintly. They turned onto a long gravel driveway. At the end sat a grand, slightly weathered Victorian mansion wrapped in oak trees. The porch sagged a little. Paint peeled at the edges. But something about it felt alive. They climbed the steps. Dwayne rang the bell. The sound echoed deep inside. After a long pause, they heard it, Tap, tap, tap. Someone approaching with a cane. The door creaked open. A woman stood there, tall and sharp-featured with silver hair tied in a bun. One of her eyes was clear and gray. The other, milky and blind. "You're late," she said, not unkindly. "Are you PN?" Dwayne asked. "I'm Dr. Penelope Nash," she replied. "Come," in just the boy. "Hold up," Dwayne stepped forward. "It's okay," Elijah said softly. "I'll be fine." Dwayne hesitated, then nodded. Inside, Penelope led Elijah down a hallway with polished floors and high ceilings. She moved with elegance, even with her cane. They entered a room that seemed to pulse with energy. A grand piano sat in the center. Wooden shelves lined the walls, filled with old sheet music and books. Penelope sat at the piano without a word and began to play. But what came out wasn't beautiful. It was harsh, sharp, angry. Notes clashed and collided. It was chaos, emotion, rage. Then she stopped. "Play it back," she said, her voice even. Elijah hesitated. Then he sat down. His hands hovered above the keys, and he played. First, he mirrored her chaos. Then slowly, he changed it. He added something, a soft thread of understanding. He took the mess she made and gave it meaning. Not perfect, but honest. When he finished, silence fell. "You didn't just copy," she said finally. "You completed." "I'm sorry," Elijah whispered. "I just heard where it wanted to go." She looked at him for a long moment. "Interesting." Then she stood. "Come with me." They moved to a cozy sitting room with tea already laid out. She poured 2 cups and sat across from him. "I don't take students anymore," she said. "Not since I lost sight in this eye. The music world doesn't like damaged goods." Elijah didn't speak. She looked him over. "But I watched your audition, and I saw something in you I haven't seen in a very long time." He swallowed. "You want to teach me?" "I want to help you find your voice," she said. "Not tricks, not showmanship, real music, but it won't be easy." "Why me?" Elijah asked. Penelope leaned back. "Because someone once tried to silence me too," she said softly. "And I let them. But you still have time." She stood. 3 days a week. You come here. I teach you everything I know. No guarantees. Just the truth." Elijah nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am, I want that." Outside, as Dwayne helped him into the car, Elijah held the note in his hand like it was gold. Dwayne looked at him. "You good?" Elijah smiled, for real this time. "Yeah," he said. "I think something's about to start." Penelope Nash didn't believe in going easy on anyone, not even a blind 9-year-old. "Again," she said, tapping her cane on the floor. Elijah's fingers ached. His back hurt. He'd already played the same passage 5 times, but he adjusted his hands and started again. This time, a little cleaner. "A little deeper. That's better," she said. "But don't just hit the notes. Speak through them." "Speak?" "Music is language, Elijah. Notes are just letters. You want people to feel you? You've got to say something worth hearing." From that day on, their lessons weren't just about technique. They were about truth. Penelope taught him how to use his ears like eyes, how to map a piano's landscape with touch, how to hear silence and understand its rhythm. She challenged him to play in noisy rooms with distractions all around. "You think a siren or a dropped program during a performance should throw you off?" she asked. "Play through it." He did. Every time. And slowly, something shifted. Elijah wasn't just playing music anymore. He was becoming music. He'd arrive for lessons with ideas, melodies humming in his head. Sometimes they came to him in dreams. Other times in the quiet moments, when his mom kissed his forehead goodnight, or when Dwayne's laughter echoed down the hall. Penelope would listen, nod, and push him further. One evening, as they drank tea in the sunroom, Elijah asked the question that had been growing in him since the first day. "Did you know Langston Rowe?" Penelope didn't answer right away. She stared into her teacup like it held something heavy. "Yes," she said finally. "We were students together, rivals, then briefly, something more." Elijah waited. "He wasn't always cruel," she continued. "But the night before the biggest competition of our lives, he told me the judges didn't believe in me, that I had no chance." "Was it true?" "No," she said, voice sharp. "He lied. I went on stage doubting everything. I fell apart. He won. After that, he spread rumors, said I was unstable, difficult, doors closed, opportunities vanished, and he rose." She looked at Elijah, eyes steely. Langston is not just a man with high standards. He's a man who burns bridges behind him, and sometimes burns people too. The next morning, Elijah woke to find his phone buzzing. Dwayne had sent him a link. Soundstage, wild card season announced. Viewers can vote former contestants back in, and under the headline was Elijah's name. Trending again. Jay Reel, the blogger who had defended him after his humiliation, had launched a campaign. "Let Elijah play. He's been posting non-stop about you," Dwayne told him over the phone. "Calling out Langston, comparing your scores to others. The internet is on fire right now." Elijah's stomach turned. "I don't know if I want to go back. Why not? What if it happens again? What if Langston's right about me?" Dwayne was quiet for a moment, then said, "You've been training every day with one of the best pianists in the world. You're not the same kid who walked onto that stage. You're better, stronger." Elijah said nothing, but inside, something stirred. That night, he played a new piece for Penelope. Soft at first, then growing into something bold and unafraid. When he finished, Penelope didn't say anything. She just smiled. A week later, the votes were in. Elijah had received more support than all other wildcard contestants combined. He was going back, but this time things felt different. When he arrived at the studio, reporters snapped photos. Crew members smiled at him. Contestants nodded in greeting. Some even clapped. And at the judges' table, Langston Rowe sat, stone-faced, unreadable. The producers announced the first challenge, light and shadow. Contestants had to create a piece showing contrast, beauty and pain, joy and sorrow. Elijah knew exactly what he would do. He worked night and day in the prep room, creating a composition based on his own life. The darkness of doubt, the quiet warmth of his mother's faith, the protective shadow of Dwayne, and the light of rediscovered purpose. But just when everything seemed lined up, the universe threw him one more blow. During rehearsal, Elijah's piano bench collapsed beneath him. He fell hard, landing on his wrist. The pain was sharp, immediate. Doctor rushed in. "It's a sprain, not broken, but he needs to rest it for at least a week." "The performance is tomorrow," Dwayne said. "Then he'll have to withdraw," the doctor replied. "No," Elijah said quietly. "I'm not quitting." "You can't play like this," Morin said. She had arrived just in time to see him in pain. "I can play with one hand," Elijah said. "Penelope taught me pieces for the left hand only, just in case." Everyone was stunned. "You sure?" Dwayne asked. Elijah nodded, because in that moment, he remembered something Penelope once told him. Real music doesn't ask for perfect conditions. It asks for truth. And with one working hand, Elijah was ready to give it. The stage lights were hot on Elijah's face. The room was silent. Cameras pointed in every direction. The world was watching. Elijah sat on the bench, his right wrist wrapped tight in a brace. His right hand rested gently in his lap. He adjusted himself, took a breath, and placed his left hand on the keys. There was no countdown, no cue, just a soft beginning. A single low note, then another. The sound floated out, quiet and unsure, like a voice finding courage. Then it grew, rolling rhythms under a haunting melody. The piece was called Left Behind, but it didn't feel like something was missing. It felt complete. Every note carried weight, not just pain but strength. Every chord felt like a question being answered. How do you rise after falling? What do you do when the world doubts you? You play anyway. Tears streamed silently down Elijah's cheeks, not from pain, but from the pressure of holding everything inside and finally letting it go. The crowd didn't move. Even backstage, the crew stopped working. One tech whispered, "He's playing with one hand." When the final note rang out, Elijah held it, fingers trembling. Then he let go. Silence. For one long second, no one breathed. Then a single person stood. Then another. The entire room rose. Standing ovation, thunderous applause. Even some of the crew in the back were wiping their eyes. But Langston Rowe stayed seated. The judges gave their feedback. The first two were glowing. "You moved this entire room," said one. "That wasn't a performance. That was a message." Then Langston spoke. "Technically, improved," he said, cold and flat. "But still indulgent. Emotion is not a substitute for musical excellence. 3 out of 10. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Even the other judges looked shocked. But Elijah just nodded, because this time, he didn't need Langston's approval. Backstage, Dwayne lifted Elijah in a big, careful hug. "You killed it, little man," he whispered. "One hand and all." Penelope was waiting. Her one good eye shimmered with pride. "You didn't just play," she said softly. "You made history." The video of Elijah's performance exploded online. People across the world watched a boy with one working hand deliver more emotion than some full orchestras. Musicians, critics, even people who knew nothing about piano commented things like, "I've played for 30 years and couldn't do this with both hands. This is why music exists. I've never cried watching piano before." Hashtags trended. One-handed symphony, Elijah Harris, and again. Let Elijah play. But behind the scenes. Langston was seething. His words had no power anymore. His criticism sounded bitter, not wise. And worst of all, he was losing control of the narrative. Back in his office, he watched the performance again. The phrasing, the tension, the emotional build. It was real. Too real. "This is her work," he whispered, jaw clenched. "Penelope's doing." He picked up the phone. "Get me everything on this boy," he barked. "His training, his compositions. I want proof he didn't write this himself." Meanwhile, Elijah was feeling something he hadn't in a long time. Peace. He still practiced every day. He still iced his wrist. But he laughed again. He hummed again. He sat with his mom, and they talked about music like they used to, when it was just a hobby, just a dream. "I'm proud of you," Morin said one evening. "Not because of the show, but because you didn't quit." Elijah smiled. "I almost did." "But you didn't," she said. "And that matters." A few days later, Elijah got a knock at his practice room door. A girl stood there, maybe a little older, holding a violin case. She looked nervous, but curious. "I'm Zara," she said. I just wanted to say your performance was different. It felt honest." Elijah nodded. "Thank you." "I've played since I was 3, she said. "Langston's been my teacher for years, but I've never played something that made people cry. Not like you." He gestured toward the piano. "You want to sit?" She did. They didn't speak much. He played. She listened. Then she played. He listened, and something unspoken passed between them. Respect, not competition. Connection, but not everyone was happy. Langston made his next move. He met with producers and presented evidence, old videos of Elijah's early playing, compared to his new compositions. "It's not possible," Langston insisted. "The boy's been coached. This is not his work." The producers launched a quiet investigation. Elijah and Penelope were called in for questioning. They showed months of notes, recordings, raw drafts of compositions, but the accusation still stung. Later that night, Elijah sat alone, heart heavy. "Why do they think I'm lying?" he asked quietly. "Why do they still need proof I'm real?" Penelope placed a small recording chip in his hand. "My first concert. Age 12, she said. Before the fame, before Langston, just music. Listen to it when you need reminding. Some things are bigger than doubt." Elijah nodded, gripping it tight, then went back to the keys. Because when the world tries to question your truth, sometimes the only answer is more music. The final round of Soundstage wasn't just another performance. It felt different. The lights were brighter. The crowd was bigger. The judges were quieter. Even Langston. Elijah stood backstage, dressed in a fitted black suit with a thin silver chain tucked under his collar. Penelope's locket. Inside it was a tiny chip, a recording of her first concert. He hadn't listened to it yet, but he kept it close. "Ready?" the stage manager asked. Elijah took a breath. "As I'll ever be." The final challenge had two parts, one solo performance and one surprise duet. And the twist? The duet had to be performed with the other finalist. That meant Zara. They'd been practicing together in secret rehearsal rooms all week, mixing her precise classical violin with Elijah's raw, jazz-soaked melodies, blending discipline with emotion. They called the piece resonance, a conversation, a reconciliation, a meeting in the middle. Before the duet came the solo. Zara played first. Her piece was haunting, controlled and graceful, with a thread of something new in it, something she hadn't shown before. Emotion. People applauded softly at first. Then, louder. Even Langston offered a nod. Then it was Elijah's turn. He stepped onto the stage, guided by a soft hand on his arm. The grand piano sat in the middle of the room like it had been waiting just for him. He took his seat. Silence. Then he began. The piece was called Braille in the Sky. It started with soft, unsure notes, like a child feeling their way in the dark. Then it opened, slowly, like sunrise. Melodies climbed like stairs. Sometimes they stumbled, but always they got back up. He layered in the sounds of his world: sirens, laughter, kitchen clatter, Sunday choirs, subway rumbles, wind through cracked windows. Not literally, emotionally. This wasn't just a song. It was how Elijah saw. And for the first time, the audience saw it too. When the final chord faded, a hush blanketed the theater. Then came the applause. Not wild, not explosive, but deep, long, full of awe. Langston didn't clap, not right away. But when he finally did, just a few slow, deliberate claps, it was louder than any praise he'd ever given, and Elijah heard it. Then came the duet. Zara joined him on stage. She didn't say a word. She just stood beside him, violin under her chin, eyes on his hands. And when the first notes of resonance began, it wasn't about winning. It was about listening. Two young artists, one who'd always played with precision, the other with feeling, meeting halfway. There were moments where the melody soared, dipped, clashed, then returned to harmony. At one point, Elijah slowed, almost paused, just enough to let Zara lead. And she did. then gently handed the melody back. It was more than music, it was trust. When it ended, people stood again. Not for one, for both. Langston watched them, face unreadable, his hands folded in front of him. He leaned toward his mic. "This," he said slowly, "is what music is meant to be. Not notes, not perfection, but resonance." He looked at Elijah, then Zara. 10 out of 10. Gasps filled the room. A perfect score from Langston Rowe. Backstage, Elijah sat quietly, holding the locket in one hand and his mother's hand in the other. "You were beautiful up there," Moran whispered, wiping her eyes. "I was just me." "Exactly," she said. When they announced the winner, the theater held its breath. And the winner of Soundstage, America's Next Virtuoso, is Elijah Harris. Confetti fell. Cameras flashed. Zara hugged him tightly. Dwayne rushed the stage, lifting him up like he used to when Elijah was little and scared of thunder. Langston didn't say much. But as Elijah passed him backstage, Langston reached out, just a touch on his shoulder. "Don't stop," he said. "Ever." That night, Elijah didn't celebrate like the others. He didn't go to the after party. He went back to the hotel, sat on the edge of the bed, and finally listened to Penelope's concert on the chip she'd given him. It was raw. It was young. It was full of fire. But it was also sad. He heard her in the music, not the teacher. The girl she used to be. The one who believed in music before it betrayed her. Elijah smiled and whispered, "You're not forgotten." 6 months. Later, Elijah stood at the front of New Hope Baptist Church, the same place he first stunned a crowd. Now the room was packed. Every pew, people standing in the aisles. A small sign outside read, "One night only, Elijah Harris, homecoming concert." He wore no suit, just a clean shirt, sleeves rolled up. He placed his hands on the worn church piano, the same one he had played when nobody knew his name. "Tonight," he said softly, "I'm not playing for cameras or judges, just for the people who first listened," and he began. The first notes of Braille in the Sky danced through the old church walls, but this time, the piece had changed. It had grown, just like him. Outside, people gathered on the sidewalk to listen through open windows. Inside, Moran sat in the front row, holding Dwayne's hand, and in the back, quietly, Penelope Nash stood near the door, watching. She didn't clap, she didn't record, she just smiled, because her work was done. Elijah Harris went on to perform around the world, Tokyo, Paris, Cape Town. But he never stopped returning to where it began. He started a foundation for kids with disabilities in music. Dwayne ran it. Zara helped teach. Penelope mentored. Quietly from the shadows. Langston? He disappeared from the public eye. But one day, a letter arrived at Elijah's doorstep. No return address, just a note. Some visions come from sight, others from soul. Yours was the one I never saw coming. It was signed, LR and Elijah. He just kept playing, because sometimes the music that matters most comes from the people who were never supposed to be heard at all. And once you hear it, you never forget.